This is a bit challenging, I must admit, after Mika Nieminen's talk this morning about the cutting-edge thing that they're doing in Aalto University. I represent a very, very traditional public translation service, because translation has been part of the Finnish government for more than 200 years. Or even before that, when we were under the Swedish rule, there were translators working from Swedish into Finnish. But then when we became part of the Russian Empire in 1809, that was when the first translators were employed by the Finnish Senate, as it was at that time. So you can imagine that in this context, with this tradition, things don't move too fast. But we are making a genuine effort to be able to manage our language data in a much more efficient way. And this is really a case of what we've done, what we achieved, and especially what we're hoping to gain with this effort. In my presentation, I will give you an overview of the organization of government language services at the moment, which is something new. And then I will tell you how we organize the incoming translation requests and how we manage the related data and the data generated as we translate. And then also some current themes that are topical in our service at the moment. Well, some background. Until 2015, that is 2.5 years ago, in March, all government translation services were brought together. Before that, each and every of the 12 ministries had its own translation services. Finland is a bilingual country, thanks to our history, with our long history with Sweden. We have these two languages, so each and every of the ministries had translators into Swedish, between 2 to 5, and the Prime Minister's office some 20 translators. In addition, most ministries had translators into English and 2 ministries translators into Russian. But each and every one of them was doing their own thing, organizing their data as they liked, outsourcing as they liked, really functioning really independently. But in 2015, all this changed. This was the time when the Translation and Language Services Division was established at the Prime Minister's office, and it brought together all those language specialists. It was not only the translation services that were brought together at that time, but all other what we call like common or support services, as you wish. So there were services relating to security, information, HR, facilities, etc. The reason for making this change was not because they thought that this would be good for the translation service only, but because they wanted to, well, have savings, spend less money on doing the same thing, to be quite frank. So currently we are an in-house service with a staff of 67 language specialists, and we are part of the government administration department. And we provide translations, language and terminology services to all 12 ministries. So it means that we must translate basically anything between, well, basically everything that you can imagine that is what kind of issues the ministries deal with. And we also supervise and develop language usage in the ministries, and that was something new which didn't happen prior to this restructuring. So what are our duties? Okay, we provide translations and revisions into Swedish, English, and Russian, and the number of Swedish translators is the highest, 38, and then 13 translators into English and 3 into Russian. I am the head of the foreign languages division, foreign languages unit, sorry, and so I deal with translators into English and Russian, and my Russian translators also do interpretation into Russian. So when our president, Mr. Niinistö, meets with President Putin, my interpreters go along. So it's very high profile thing. only consecutive interpreting. Then we also offer instructions concerning public administration translations, and that's very important because we outsource a lot. Our resources can only meet about half of the demand, which is growing all the time. So we outsource, and we have a certain set of agencies and freelance translators that we work with. This was arranged through public tendering procedure, trying to follow and imitate a bit the system that they have in place in Sweden. We do terminology work, provide recommendations, manage the translation memory system, which is now common to all translators. Before, not all translators were even using a translation memory system. We have an internal term base, and we also maintain the government online term bank, which is available to everyone. It contains 14 glossaries, all of them multilingual, at least Finnish, Swedish, and English. Most of them have even more languages, and provide information and advice, and also organize government work on clear administrative language. And that's a new duty, but it's also very important because the better texts we get, the easier it is to translate, obviously. And this is actually set out in our Administrative Procedure Act. The Section 9 says that an authority shall use appropriate, clear, and comprehensible language. So we can always fall back on the law and say, this text is not good enough to be translated, you need to work on it. We seldom do, but we could. Okay, so what was the new normal as of 2015? Well, compared with the situation a year earlier, we estimated that the number of assignments will increase by 750%. This was an estimate which was really hard to make, because it was only the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of the Interior that actually had some sort of statistics on their translation services and their translation needs. This is what we estimated. What made the situation even more interesting was that we could get no additional personnel, only the translators from the different ministries were brought together. We needed statistics, and came to realize that we need an automatic assignment registration system. Earlier, everything had been done through emails. You just send an email, ask for a translation, you get it back. Everybody's happy. But with the number increasing to 17,000 a year, we thought there is no way we can handle this by email. So what we did, we tailor-made for us a system for ordering and to order and manage translation requests, and it got this fancy name, Shake, because it's a SharePoint application, no other reason. Our language technology specialist was very much involved in building this, so he knew precisely what we needed, what we wanted, and made sure that the service provider really listened to our needs, and we could get a tool that would fit our purposes. It's placed on the Finnish government intranet called Senaattori, which is accessible to all government employees. And in the same place, you can also find other information about the services we provide. And what's good about it is that as it is on the general intranet, there is no need for extra usernames or passwords, so it's in a way user-friendly. And we don't ask for any other information that you would need to provide anyway if you ordered a translation by email. So the basic information, the only thing that we ask them, because we do statistics based on characters, so we ask them to indicate how many characters the request is. Not all of them can do it, so it's not compulsory. We can fill it in later. But what is important as well is that the users have no access to any of the assignments that they have sent us, because we don't want them to kind of know what we're doing with this and that particular assignment, because it might be very important for that person who's requesting it, that why haven't you started translating it yet? Why is it still on the hold? Because he doesn't probably know that we have like 50 other assignments that are more urgent to do with. So we keep that information to ourselves, but they can use the online system to access us and contact us easily. What Shake provides us with is 2 automations. First of all, when a translation request is sent via the Shake system, the assignment is automatically registered into the system and it gets a unique work number. So we always know which translation we're dealing with. It has the year and then a running number for each assignment. It also generates an email to the requester which says that that your assignment has been registered and it was successful. Don't worry, we will deal with it. But what it does in addition is that it sends an email message to the translator who is responsible for translations in that domain. We usually still have translators mainly specializing in the same area which they specialized in before coming to the Prime Minister's office. So let's say translators from the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, they still mainly deal with translations from that ministry. Of course, they do a lot of other work as well, but that's like their main responsibility area. So the translation requests go directly to those translators or to one translator, usually, because there aren't that many. And we don't need any kind of a desk in between, but it goes to the translator and he or she will start working on it. And in Shake there is also a view where you can actually follow the workflows for each of the languages, so it also goes automatically to the right language group. So I, as a head of the unit, can go and click on the English group and I see all the assignments that are underway and I can see who's doing it and what is the stage of the translation and what is the deadline, how many pages it is, etc., etc. So at a glance I get a very good view of the workload we have. Additionally, the Shake also saves the file that the requester is sending to a specific unspecified network drive. So they all end up on the same drive, all our translations. Each assignment is given its own number and own file, so we can access them from one place, and this is where all the working takes place. So all the data is stored there. Also, if the requester has sent any background information, any background data, that will also be there. And also the final product, also the translation memory files, all those go to the same place automatically. We don't need to have any extra work in that relation. Okay, so that's one of the first, the big automation, and then the second one is with our internal functions. If the deadline is less than 24 hours and the assignment is still in the status of vastaanotettu, so it's only received, the system will prompt you and say, look, it's less than 24 hours, I think you should start doing something. Okay, and then after the translation is finished and delivered, then this is done manually. It's given a status toimitettu, delivered, and those assignments are archived automatically over before the next day. So at midnight, the system automatically archives all translations that are completed. Unfortunately, everything else in Shake is manual, but at least it gives us a way of achieving some benefits. So this is how we use Shake. It stores all relevant information about the translation and the revision assignments, so all basic information. It follows the progress of the assignment, and it collects statistics for operational planning and budgeting. But it is not used for storing files, so the files are not in the Shake, but on the drive, and it does not guide our functions. So it's not a system that dictates how we do our work, and it does not replace other forms of communication. We still talk occasionally. What's also important, it also gives us data on how much we need to revise. Because as I said, we outsource about half of our work. We have made a risk assessment, and we try to revise in-house all of the most important texts. And this also provides us statistics about how many pages we actually revise in-house and how much of that data we can actually insert to our translation memories, because we have in the outsourcing contract a clause stating that all service providers must send also the translation memories to us. And so they are put into a separate translation memory, and we use it as a background memory when we translate, but with a long stick, to be honest. We don't accept everything that comes from that memory. As you said, that we don't want to pollute our own internal memories. And unfortunately, that is the state of play at the moment, that the quality is not at the level that as we would like it to be. So it's important to know how much we have to revise. This is how things looked last year. A bit more than 12,000 requests, 78,000 pages, and this year, by the end of October, we experienced an increase of 11% in the number of requests and 15% in the number of pages. So the demand is increasing all the time. So managing our data, translation memories is of extreme importance. So how does Shake come into that? I mean, how come this system for managing our translation assignment plays a role in data management? Well, first of all, it stores, as I said, all the documents automatically on a set network drive, which can be accessed by everyone. And it gives us real-time information on the status of the workflows, and it enables to search for and retrieve earlier translations thanks to this automatic archiving. So you don't need to go and search from another system or from different places. You can go to Shake and search for things, for the files, for the translations, and you'll find them. More importantly, it facilitates the establishment of common practices for the use of translation memories, term banks, and how we prioritize and that sort of things. We use attributes, as does everyone, I suppose, in our translation memories, which enables us to retrieve theme-based or domain-based translation memories for the use of the external service providers. So we cooperate with them because they have to provide us with their translation memories with their final product. We try to help them by providing them with memories that we have compiled. And this is something, Andrea, that I haven't thought that we could actually provide the ELRC with, but we'll do as I get back home. Also it helps in a way that for terminology work, we have in the workflow decided that whenever a translator comes across a new term, he or she automatically enters it in our internal term bank, and these are validated by our terminologists, and then they again can be retrieved based on certain attributes and be given to the service providers outside the Prime Minister's office. And as I said, we have statistics, and it's very user-friendly. Our customers have been very happy about it. You can imagine that there was a lot of worry how things are going to change when the translators won't be any longer in the ministries, but in one place, that they will lose touch with the people and this will become all very bureaucratic, etc. But our users have been very happy with this. They come to realize that they actually get a better service. They get they get better translations, I dare to say, because now the data is shared and not in silos in each and every one of the ministries. So what are our current themes? Okay, this would have been too nice to be true. Shake is coming to an end of its lifespan, unfortunately, and we are working on a new similar system. And since this has been a success story with happy customers, happy translators, happy managers, I dare say, they are now extending this to other services as well at the Prime Minister's office. So we are trying to find an online request management system that meets our needs, but can be also used by other functions as well. We are trying to find ways of providing much more data on the opendata.fi website, and we have some glossaries already there, but hopefully those that are in the government glossary can all be put on the open data. So that's something that we're working on. And we also have to do public procurement for our translation memory tool, and that's why we still haven't thought so much about machine translation and plugging it into our system, because at this stage we really don't know what will be our translation memory program as of next fall. We hope it is still Studio. We strongly hope so, because it will make life a lot easier for us, but we open for other alternatives as well. So we'll see how that comes. So, what are the problems then in terms of data sharing? We have all the data, it's organized in translation memories or in term banks, etc., so it is all there. Some people would say, why don't you just ship it over to the ELRC? That would be very nice indeed, and we would be happy to do that. But unfortunately, the translation memories also contain some data that cannot be easily shared. This is especially the case between translations from Finnish into Swedish, because all legislation in Finland has to be translated into these two languages. A law is not a law before translation is made. But our translation memories contain all the versions from sketch 1 with the final product. So you can imagine that some of these things are very politically sensitive, and I don't think that our ministers or heads of department would be very happy to share that data, and they actually aren't. We've discussed this issue and we're trying to find ways around it, maybe through filtering our translation memories. But the problem is with the earliest data, there aren't reliable attributes that would help you to filter the data. But we're trying to work on that. But as I said, this was just a case of one country trying to do something about data management in the translation service, and at least we found a way to share data among all government ministries. Hopefully we will extend this to include government agencies and other institutions. We collaborate with them, but we don't share data currently. And as we progress in this, I think we will be able to provide the ELRC also with more and better data. So, this is Finland at the moment.
I wanted to make a very quick comment about the last statement you made about the accuracy of the translations or the versions of the translations, etc. I think what we are looking for is things that are expressed in words. Whether what you state is semantically valid or not is not really important, as long as the translations are accurate. So if you translate version 0, between Swedish and Finnish in that case, even if the text is completely wrong and the parliament will revise it, etc., if the translations are really good, which we assume, then this is what we are looking for. And this applies to all the resources we are after in ELRC. We're just looking for things expressed in words, and where the translations are done by specialists and high-quality experts. Thank you. My question is about the translation memories that you mentioned. Do you provide your own translation memories to your, when you outsource your translations, do people get some of your translation memories with the document?
We retrieve those that we think that will be useful for them. So they will be theme-based or domain-based memories that we provide them with. Yeah. As to your comment about this, whether it's the first version or the final version, that's a very good argument, and this is something that we have to convince our superiors about, because they're really, really worried about this thing. Yeah.
It's just a very quick question. This is
Yeah.
within the ministries level. How are translations managed at the lower levels, at directorate level and municipal level, county level? Is it up to each agency to organise their own translations?
Yeah.
Is there any coordination or shared service, centralisation?
No. That still remains to be done. And I hope that by setting this example, we will hopefully achieve some more coordination at that level as well. But again, that's not in our hands, because they make their own decisions. Yes, thank you.
Hi, just one point. This is a general point arose in some of the earlier discussions. It's not one that would impact so hugely on the European Commission, because they, although to the extent that they outsource translation work would be very important, but I'd have a professional interest in legal matters going back, but I would have had very little knowledge of copyright matters, and I think the whole issue in relation to use of translation memories is a very central and important point of what the ELRC, I think, is all about, and getting permission to use these. Now, it's far easier, as you know, in relation to any legal matter, to create the correct framework at the beginning than to try and patch things together after things are moving. And there's also a very strong proprietorial and personal intellectual interest in translators in what they work, in their work, even if they're being paid to do work that's been returned to a customer. So I think the copyright in the translated work, I didn't realise this until the feeder conference in Dublin. I learned it at the feeder conference in Dublin, that the copyright of the translated work, even if it's James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, or if it's any other great work of art or literary merit, belongs to the translator, not to James Joyce or anybody else. So it's very important that even in access to translation memories, that these are that agreements are arrived at in advance of any deal, because once everything's open to and subject to negotiation before a deal is done, and then once everybody's clear on that, once you have legal access to the translation memories, because they're very much part and parcel of the overall finished work of translation, and ELRC would obviously, it would make life for ELRC far easier, of course, if these issues can be tidied up. And it's not an unfair thing, because essentially whoever pays the piper, I think, is entitled to the tune. Do you know what I mean? I think that would be accepted, and it avoids misunderstandings down the road. But I didn't realise that myself, that the actual copyright, the legal copyright of the translated work, regardless of what the source material is, rests with the translator. I'm open to challenge on that, but I think I'm correct in saying that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for raising that up, because it's really important. And in our contracts with the service providers, we stipulate that the copyright has to be transferred to us. So we own also the translation after we paid for it.
Please, we would like to know from Baltic states' point of view, is it some kind of rules in procurement regulation in Finland that stated that if public governments make public procurement in the question of translation, it's necessary to submit also. It's like a technical documentation, technical requirements that translators submit also these memories.
Yes, actually we were pretty ruthless when we were setting out the minimum criteria for translation providers. We stated that you have to be able to provide us with a translation memory. That was the minimum criteria.
So when you have this clause that says you get the data from them, I've heard a lot of people say, so that we can share it with ELRC, but what about with everyone, with the public, so that we can actually improve quality for Finnish in the public domain, not just in an e-translation portal?
That's a very good point to make. Obviously, national efforts are also very important, and we are finding ways of establishing better practices within administration, central, regional level. But as with ELRC, it is the same thing with this regional and local level. It's a question of resources. We don't have that many people who have time to deal with these matters, so we have to concentrate on something at a time, and unfortunately can't do everything at one time, even though we would very much like to.
May I just add a very quick comment? I stated this yesterday in one of my talk about the legal requirement and the legal constraint, just to endorse what Kenneth said. Today, by law, and this is valid for all EU countries, Norway and Iceland, in addition to that, there is a directive from the European Union that forces all the public sector bodies to make their data reusable both for research and industry. So what we are trying to do in ELRC is to work together with the public bodies that have data and make sure that at least as a first step we get this for ELRC and then for DGT, but the ultimate goal is to make this available for researchers, for technology developers, to make sure that this is boosted somehow in Europe. So the really primary goal is to work with DGT, but the ultimate one is to make sure that the data is also available for research and companies that develop technologies. And hopefully institutions, I'm sure that Finland will be happy to work with us on this, will be ready to share this widely once they do have the human resources to get this out of their archives. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, thank you also, Khalid. I would just like to add on to the statement, because we are there, the ELRC is there also, not just to share language resources and to provide a repository, but to really help. If you say that you have a data set, and it's really great, it's a nice translation that could be shared, but there is some information in it which may not be able to be published, or there are maybe some bad pieces of text or whatever. Anything that you need to make these resources available, really anything. That's what we are there for help. Be it any legal questions, any support with the licensing, or just to find the right distribution level for your resource. That's what we are here. And the technical matters in any case, like formatting, aligning, or even just anonymization. So